I've been sent to learn about the Order of Shadows, how they strayed so far, why they ignore our requests for collaboration. The first step is information, and for that I need local contacts. So far, every line of inquiry we've pursued has failed. Balthazar's invasion and Joko's absence makes this a unique opportunity for discovery. I will not let the Perceptors down. Successfully infiltrated the mines. Strong Shadows influence here. Nobody's talking, though. It'll take time to build enough trust to exploit. Even with my Vabian ancestry, this is dicey, dangerous. Progress. After some strong hints, I was sympathetic to their cause, and some stronger Alonian wine. The mine foreman let slip he works with Shadows. An associate, not an agent. I can use that, and him. Met with 2 confirmed Shadows associates. Astonishing. To them, we are the ones who lost our way. To them, Joko is a more pressing threat than Kralkatorrik, or any Elder Dragon. Bombshell. Shadows is a splinter group. Original Whispers still here, further south than Alona proper. They rejected Shadows' exclusive focus on Joko. Schism formed. Shadows began parallel operations. Secured proof that Shadows plays all sides off each other to keep the status quo churning and exploitable. They advanced Joko's cause one day, Sun Spears the next. A very dangerous game. Troubling. Confirmed that Shadows sacrifices innocence simply to protect their ability to influence events. Schemes that only serve to perpetuate more schemes. Do they even have an endgame? I think they're on to me. Both of my primary contacts have gone missing, and my secondaries refuse to acknowledge me. There's so much more to learn, but I fear it's no longer safe to learn it. My cover's definitely blown. Strangers tried to follow me home. I gave them the slip, but this will be my last dispatch. If Shadows knows what I'm up to and where to find me...
Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means. What an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Kunavine. It does. They need me.
Well, welcome to End of Dragons Daily. What you just heard a second ago is the lore that I stupidly should have edited in the last part. But hey, that's the value of doing a daily show, I guess. It's from the lore books that you get throughout POF that were also voice acted. Fantastic, right? An example of a feature that I really want to see in End of Dragons because it was executed so well in Path of Fire. Another kind of thing would be the NPC representatives of the various elite specs. Speaking of elite specs, the big topic I'm currently collecting comments for is the Ranger elite spec associated with the next X-Pack. You guys can keep typing about that. It will be on the next part we discuss that. For now, I've got still a bazillion other comments that I want to run through. Starting with JD, who has a theory about that intro dialogue we're listening to every day. This video gave me a new theory. Suppose there is a Canthan Scion of Glint, and that is the new character in the trailer speaking with Kunavang. Now that I think is a brilliant fit straight away. It hits all the bars and stipulations the devs have said about who that character in the trailer is. Maybe this is a new Vlast, for example. Mortals are little flames, brilliant, hot, then gone. This is the Canthan Scion showing empathy to the humans and mortals and their fragility, much like Glint. Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means. By comparison, those immortal beings lose sight of their mortality, often becoming destructive with their magic as we fear Aurene might. What an ending means, rather than just the lifetime of mortals, those who face eternity lose sight of their own death or the possibility of their death, driving them mad. I don't know whether they really get driven mad by that. I think it's something more tangible, like we saw the Kralkatorrik arc. But still, you're in the ballpark, I think. In this, I think the Canthan Scion is cryptically suggesting that the dragons, including herself, must sacrifice themselves to dilute and divide the magic to protect the mortals of Tyria. By the way, if there is a Canthan Scion, you have to ask who's guiding that Scion. Like, because Vlast never had a champion and kind of just wandered and really wasn't adequate in the end. Who is the champion of the Canthan Scion? Could be a whole other character, but my hunch is if they're going with this plot, it's Kunavang. Kunavang is the champion of this other Scion, maybe. I mean, the power levels seem a bit weird there. This is the end of Dragons. You don't know it doesn't. You know it doesn't have to be this way. Perhaps Kunavang plays a bit of a morally grey character here, disagreeing with the Sire's suggestion of her own death. Having lived hundreds of years, perhaps Kunavang has started to forget what lifetime means. For the mortals, instead of preferring her own self-preservation, to what degree Kunavang is compliant or defiant could be an interesting story. Additionally, if she was charged to protect the Sire by Glint, would Kunavang allow her to do this sacrifice? Well, look, if Kunavang is not clued in on Glint's legacy, I think that it's very likely we'll go in another direction where Kunavang disagrees with Glint's legacy. And in that case, I think you might be onto something. What we're actually hearing in that trailer, you know it doesn't have to be this way, is that Kunavang had a whole other idea beyond the whole replacement thing. And I kind of like the way that works as far as the expansions are concerned as well. You know, like Heart of Thorns introduces the legacy, POF explains the legacy, and when we're in Kesho, and now End of Dragons concludes the legacy, or even throws out the window because Kunavang had another idea or something. I don't know. And then finally, no Kunavang, it does have to be this way, they need me. To tie it all together, I'd somehow like for this to be another hint of Glint's prophecies. This is the fate of the Canthan Scion, a secret weapon tucked far away from Corteria. It's a stretch that Glint would know this much about the story, but it could be a satisfying, all-encompassing tie-up that Glint had prophesied the extinction of her entire race, including all of her children, and all remaining possible Scions, conveniently removing dragons entirely from the game into whatever's next for Guild Wars 2. All thanks to Glint. Well, that I find a bit difficult to chew, and I think a lot of people look at this expansion and say we're going to Cantha just because it's retreading Guild Wars 1 locations and, you know, it's a nostalgia bomb and they want that for the market and so on. And maybe that's true, but I also think it may be true that we're going to Cantha because there's a really good reason for that specific region in the story, and that's because it's the Dragon Empire. And if you read things like An Empire Divided, and if you look at some of the dialogue about the salt sprays and stuff while you're playing Guild Wars 1, you'll know this is a land that was filled with dragons, lesser dragons, so to speak, of Kunavang's kin, like the salt sprays and so on. And there has to be a reason for that, and I think that ties very well into all the eggs from Glint and her chamber. So I think we're in the ballpark, but we don't quite have enough, so it's all still a bit cloudy. Next, we have Ben, who says the Aetherblades will come in by disguising it as bonus Living World Season 1 visions. We think it's filler content to keep us busy for the expansion release. Then they throw a curveball, and the idea is to familiarize ourselves with the Aetherblades before they take us to Cantha. I actually think this is a really good idea. I don't know how difficult it is to add those visions of Living World Season 1, and we saw they kind of did drop them in, and it became immediately eminent just how bad some of that Season 1 content plays and so on. But I'm still really happy the devs did some kind of patch giving us access to more of that material. And if you look, when we got that release, none of it was Aetherblade related, and there is a lot of Aetherblade related stuff in Season 1. So maybe that's perfect, actually. An efficient, well-paced release that gives us subject material that is important for the gap between now and End of Dragons. I can see it. I really can. And it's a good idea to get even more of Living World Season 1 in there, even if it's not in the story journal and doing all the things we really want it to be doing. Next, we got Kthrow, who says, one thing I've always wished ArenaNet would implement is variable water levels. I know they've never done it because of engine limitations, but I think something like a rising and falling of tides would be a really fun idea for a map/day-night cycle. Could potentially be feasible as there would only be a single water body, just move the Z-axis. I think there are ways they could, like, spoof this. I was talking about this quite recently, the idea that, in theory, with the whole explorable dungeons concept, they could have had it like, you do Path 1 Ascalon Catacombs, you do Path 2, and there's no water anywhere. But in Path 3, because there's like a whole loading screen you're going through, even in this engine, the way that they have the game structured and all the code they have available to them and so on right now, they could just load you in now to a new version of Ascalon Catacombs that is entirely flooded. And honestly, I think that's a really exciting proposition to be able to explore one of these areas that was dry and now is completely submerged. I'm surprised they never did it with any of the dungeons at launch. Maybe they didn't want all the data or something, because it's basically a whole new map I think they'd have to be giving you. And yeah, we do still miss out in Guild Wars of this idea of dynamic water that can rise or lower. And I think there's a lot of really fun, awesome, like tense gameplay that comes of that. I always love moments in games where like there's rising sewage or ooze or something, and you've got to run out of the sewers real quick, otherwise it'll catch up to you and it'll burn your feet or whatever. And Guild Wars just does nothing even remotely on those levels. I don't know whether I expect End of Dragons to start doing it, because again, I don't know if they're actually that ambitious about carrying on with this game and this engine in this way. If they really do want to stick with this for a whole other decade, these are the kind of exciting innovations I'd like to see. And we saw in Season 4 that they did play with a lot of other stuff. We have like more moving elevators and things like that now. But yeah, they can't do this. One of the things that really shocked me when I went back to play World of Warcraft Classic last year is in one of the dungeons, immediately I saw that they had variant water levels and they had like more interesting stuff they could do with the environment. And Guild Wars 2, you know, well over a decade later was still incapable of it. Next we got Ben, who says, I've always thought of Jormag's use of brother, etc. was just a way to manipulate Aurene. Aurene being a dragon that has a strong emotional connection to the commander and other living beings. I think Jormag's trying to say they're one of the same being and family. Jormag even says little sister at the start of the saga, and in most recent times says grandniece instead, following a debate with Aurene where she gets quite demonic and angry. Yeah, you might be right. Like I said, I think it could just be metaphorical language. Are Primordus and Jormag actually connected, or are they simply kindred? You know, they have both reached this echelon of power, this crazy super being status, that now you can call them similar in some ways, but their origins are distinct. You do have to consider that they basically are one another's anti, in a way. Not just because of the hot and cold, but because Primordus is this primal, like, very blunt, hurricane-type entity that has absolutely no intelligence to it, as far as we can see. I mean, maybe it's got a bit that Bram is now tapping into, but particularly on the scale of communication and stuff, while Jormag is the complete reverse. And you can say, well, that's just an accident that ended up happening, or it's because they really are twinned. And I don't know whether ArenaNet will go into that detail for us. There's a lot riding on this next release, eh, guys? Next, we've got Tracy with just a small note. I'm leaving this comment to say I missed your videos. I came back to your page every day, hoping to see a new video, and was sad when there was nothing new, so thanks for that. I know it must be incredibly hard creating ones frequently, but if you just post highlights from your Twitch or something, I think your viewers would appreciate it. Well, thanks very much for that. That's really nice for you to say. A little note about the Twitch thing. I do want to say, you're really not going to be seeing that come over on the main channel unless it's like a really well-edited, like, awesome thing about, like, a specific concept. Like, if I go back to doing challenge runs and stuff, you might find that, you know, a condensed version ends up here. But just for general, casual achievement collecting and just regular old gameplay, which is what I've mostly been doing recently, I really don't think it's high quality enough whatsoever. And I'm doing it pretty irregularly as well, to be honest. There's a kind of an annoying crossover with Twitch where the fun part is it's live and I like to answer people's questions and give them interactions and stuff, and then we end up talking about a ton of End of Dragons daily topics and it completely wins me of enthusiasm for this. So you're not going to see like that crossover. I'm just going to be prioritizing this, but thank you. That's a nice message. Next we've got a Ruther who says, I thought that the Bloodstone was the unique thing this cycle. No other cycle managed to pass even some magic to the future generation. These races were more advanced than the previous races for this reason. Look, I like this idea as just sort of a general theory. I think it works well, and especially when you think about how the Bloodstone kind of ended up having an influence on the gods and the Abaddon fallout and all of that. And I think in another world where Living World releases could have more text and dialogue and stuff like that, they could have explored that even better, and it could have been a really fun idea. But it's not really a fact, and it's not really a fact because we just know so little about anything before the Masart Seer Forgotten cycle. I mean, this idea of Mother is the first we've heard of anything ever before then. And in my imagination, I like to think there were lots and lots of cycles, you know, with maybe many different iterations of Elder Dragons. And again, I don't want to just discredit tens of thousands of years of fighting and struggling or whatever against these primordial forces. Surely something at some point figured out something like a Bloodstone, you know, were the Seers really the very, very, very first? But, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe ArenaNet's view and idea of this world and this franchise is that the birth of the universe, so to speak, or the birth of Tyria at least, was not that long ago. And in fact, there were only like 2 or 3 cycles before. And when we start dealing with Mother, we really might finally start getting tangible answers about this. It wouldn't have surprised me if the dev said, yeah, Mother was literally of the cycle before the Seers and that was the only one. And they'll basically reveal that there were 3 risings. And in a lot of ways, I wouldn't like that, but it wouldn't surprise me. You know, I think certain things that they've done in the past are a bit dodgy. Like when you go to the Temple of the Aegis, the hero challenge at the Temple of the Aegis talks about how time started there. Like, that's crazy. That's so big as an idea. And it's just some, like, random flavor text. Like, what substantiates that comment? Where is that comment coming from? Is that local legends about the Temple of the Aegis? Is that something the commander knows because they were educated about that? Is that something the commander's learning as they commune with the point? Was this information true now, but not necessarily talked about ever in Guild Wars 1? Why is the Temple of the Ages such a, like, dismissible, hand-wavy location if it's where time began? Like, that's so crazy. And so I think many of us just kind of ignore it and look away from it. And, you know, there's a couple of times when Arena have done that, and I think it's a little bit tricky. I'd rather they stay away so that the game can feel as big and expansive as possible. Next, we've got Matja Tanjevic, who says, "Hey WP, I've thought of a theory that the Dominion of Winds hides something powerful behind its walls that could bring the end of dragons. While looking at the map located at every place where the dragons emerged and spread their corruption, as well as where the brand ends. In the center of it, I can see the Dominion of Winds as a place they were trying to go. Maybe they had a big battle in the previous cycle and ran out of juice near it. A nice theory to think about till the next chapter of Icebrood Saga. Only thing I can think of the whole Krau Kthrow going to the mist thing is illogical when creating that theory, but maybe he got so blinded by all that power and forgot his goal." Well, I don't... You've basically provided an alternate idea for why the Elder Dragons are all around Corteria. It's an alternate idea to the Bloodstone theory. And I'm not going to say you're wrong. There's space for this. It could work. I kind of like the idea, though, that they do have some sort of super weapon. Maybe not that can just bring about the end of dragons altogether, but I like the idea that they procured some kind of artifact in Kthrow and fled with it. You know, kind of like how the Norton fled from the Northern Shiver Peaks and they brought a tooth with them? What if the Tengu, as they were kicked out of their homeland, not by the movements of Elder Dragons, let's be clear, but just people, humans, but maybe as they did that, they managed to smuggle some artifact and they've been guarding it very secretly. I think this would actually be a really smart thing for ArenaNet to write about, because it's an extra tangible thing that they can point to and say, look, this is why the Tengu was so mistrustful. It wasn't just all the xenophobia and all of that stuff that they dealt with before, but they're also guarding something super major. And for that reason, sorry, but we fired arrows at you during the Scarlet attack at Lion's Arch and so on. And I think there is a good chunk of this player base that does need that extra push to like the Tengu. Some people really cling to that Lion's Arch attack moment and use it as a reason to hate them. I kind of see it as a cool moment where one of the races acts as a shade of grey instead of just goody two-shoes all the time, which I really enjoy, and I'm still very happy to play a Tengu. But adding more stuff like that would be good. Now, what kind of artifact might they have grabbed? And what the artifact would have to be something the Tengu themselves also know is important. I don't know. Did they hide a Scion? Did they take a Scion there for all this time? That would be kind of a bombshell. I think another really fun idea is, remember the blue orb that the crate had? What if the Tengu procured an orb of some kind? An orb that will be relevant against the deep sea dragon. You know, because the blue orb was good against Zaitan, so maybe we need like a green orb to be good against the deep sea dragon. You get what I mean? There could be a lot of fun stuff there. I like the way your mind works. Next, we've got Sire Harder, who says, further to other comments I made today, I noticed in MMOs, some people gaslight the game. Let me explain that. So they abuse it in the sense that they really love them, then they didn't, then they attack them. Or they say it's not good enough, or it wasn't good enough, when really it was. Yeah, it's not just an MMO thing. It's like this idea of like a lifestyle game, a long-term game. A game that you pick up because it's like, I'm going to play this for ages. And a lot of people don't think about, I'm going to play this for ages. They kind of think, I'm going to play this forever. They think, well, World of Warcraft came out in 2005 and I'm still playing it. So any other MMO that isn't holding my attention for 20 years is eventually going to be a bad MMO, because there's going to be a day I uninstall it, and there's going to be a catalyst for my uninstallation, maybe a balance patch you didn't like, maybe an expansion release that just wasn't that entertaining, whatever, and they'll fixate on that catalyst and they'll put their Steam review as a bad review or whatever. It's not just MMOs, it's any kind of really long-term game. I think people are becoming familiar with this, and I think that, you know, gaming is a new industry in a lot of ways, and the way that we critique and review and think about our experiences is changing. I see a lot of people making fun of Steam reviews where a guy has like 20,000 hours and they don't recommend it, right? And they say it's bad or something. People do kind of see the hypocrisy in that. It's just going to take some time, because I think a lot of the way we review and think about what we're consuming and how is kind of juvenile, frankly. And, you know, if ArenaNet put out a hideous patch, I mean a truly hideous patch today, in which, you know, they removed 99% of the content and the only 1%, like actively removed the content, and only 1% is left, and it's a paywall, I would like to say that no, I would no longer recommend Guild Wars 2, and I would talk negatively about that new thing, the Catalyst, but I would still call it a good game as far as my experiences were with it, and I would still call it value for money as far as when I played it. It wouldn't be relevant to other consumers at that point, but you get what I mean. And there's a vast world in the middle of those two ideas. Alonso returns with, oh wow, I didn't notice when I was playing them that the Tengu in the DRMs have a lot of new animations. A ton of new animations, they say. The greatsword stance looks very cool, very samurai-like, further confirming to me that they're going to be a big part of the next expansion. Maybe not playable, but I can still hope. Yeah, I've heard a lot about this. I haven't seen the new animations yet. I need to see like an animation reel where someone shows me. What is it that... The Tengu now wield a lot of new weapons we didn't see them wielding before, and they have, like, unique stances for them and stuff. It's tricky, isn't it? Because I think that, yeah, the likelihood of Tengu and the Dominion of Winds and stuff in Kthrow went way up this most recent release. The idea of them being playable also went up, and especially if there's a load of new animations, because you know what that is. That's ArenaNet covering their bases for all the potential combos that players will be while they're acting as Tengu once they fully unlock. It's also kind of a nice sneaky way for the devs to incrementally put that data into the clients without it looking suspicious maybe. But I haven't seen them, and I'm kind of excited about it. Lastly, I want to end on this message from Luke, who has a message to the opposite of the prevailing winds and the echo chamber that we've had going on here. And I think it's completely fair, and they deserve to have their opinion out there. Luke says, I do love MMO story, but I hate the tell instead of show. If Guild Wars 2 had static quests, I probably wouldn't have started playing in the first place. I'd rather the devs show me story through hearts and such instead of random NPC. I don't know, give me a wall of text. Well, look, it's funny you use hearts as an explanation, because hearts are... They criminally do not get enough look in this discussion, but hearts basically are traditional quests. They are traditional quests that you automatically accept when you enter a region. They are traditional quests that cannot cover large distances, and they're traditional quests that automatically give you the experience and the reward the second that you finish them. And they're traditional quests with, like, optional choices, I suppose. But, you know, that kind of is what Guild Wars 2 did as a stand-in, because they realized they didn't have enough dynamic events to be the content all on its own. And they did hearts. You know, to know what's really going on in a heart, you're reading the text on the top right of the UI, or you're speaking to the NPC, who, in the new dialogue, in the Guild Wars 2 dialogue system, I should say, is giving you information in tiny little bursts, but essentially it's a wall of text. You just have to click through it enough times, right? So I don't know whether hearts really stand out against it. But look, I think that it's really important to recognize that people do love events. And a lot of people, and for as many ways that Guild Wars 2 failed to deliver on all the really heady and big ideas about events, it still did do something massive and brilliant. And in an era after End of Dragons, or an era in a new game for the franchise, I think events are here to stay. With just some more refinements, we could see them go a really, really long way. So there you have it, guys. Once again, Ranger ideas. Let's talk about Ranger in End of Dragons expansion. And I'm kind of thinking, I want to see something to do with the petrification of the Echo Valley Forest. Like, I haven't really seen many of your comments about that just yet, but don't you guys think that would be cool? Some kind of, like, twist on, like, how Ranger is always so nature-y inclined. What about something that, like, embraces the stone or something? Maybe that even works quite well if Primordus is a big part of the story during that time. I don't know, I think that could be quite fun. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Also, keep an eye out for the poll on when you joined Guild Wars 2. I'll put that up on the YouTube community section today. Thank you all. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.